He was surrounded, outnumbered. His weapon was gone. To the German soldiers who cornered him in the shattered French forest, he was just another paratrooper, another prisoner to be processed. They saw a man caught, a battle ended, but they were wrong, deadly wrong. What happened in those next seconds would defy all logic, all expectation, and write a name into the annals of unparalleled valor. This is not just a story of survival. This is the story of what happens when one man, pushed beyond all human limits, decides he is not finished fighting. This is the story of how the Germans captured him. He laughed, and then killed 21 of them in 45 seconds. It is June 10th, 1944, D-Day +4. The Normandy landings have secured a bloody foothold, but the battle for France is a savage, yard-by-yard struggle through the labyrinthine hedgerows and dense woodlands of the Bocage. In this green hell, a single American paratrooper separated from his unit is about to face a nightmare, and create one. Our story centers on one man, Technical Sergeant Jake McNiece, a hardened veteran of the 101st Airborne Division, 506th Parachute Infantry Regiment. But to understand his actions, we must first understand the cauldron into which he was thrown. Paratroopers moving through a Norman orchard, the 101st Airborne, the Screaming Eagles, had been dropped chaotically behind Utah Beach in the early hours of June 6th. Their mission: secure the causeways off the beaches and disrupt German counterattacks. For 4 days, men like McNiece fought in scattered ad hoc groups, enduring constant artillery bombardment, sniper fire, and vicious close-quarters engagements in the confined hedgerow country. Sleep was a memory. Ammunition was low. Every shadow in the thick Norman foliage could conceal a German MG-42 team or a Fallschirmjäger patrol. McNiece, a pre-war cowboy and later a recruit from Oklahoma, was known for his toughness, independence, and a certain disregard for formal military protocol. He was a fighter, pure and simple. By June 10th, his regiment was pushing towards the key town of Carrington, a vital link between the American beach. The pressure was immense. German resistance, particularly from the elite 6th Parachute Regiment and elements of the 17th SS Panzergrenadier Division, was fanatical. On that afternoon, McNiece's squad was ordered to conduct a reconnaissance in force on the outskirts of a woodline near the village of Bull. Intelligence suggested a German mortar position was located there, hammering American lines. It was a dirty, dangerous job. Moving through a sun-dappled orchard, the paratroopers moved with trained caution, their M1 Garands and Thompson submachine guns at the ready. The air was thick with the smell of damp earth and blooming apple blossoms, a cruel contrast to the war that surrounded them. Little did McNiece know, a larger German patrol, perhaps 30 strong from the 6th Parachute Regiment, was moving on an intercept course. They were veterans of the Eastern Front, skilled in envelopment and silent movement. The stage was set for a sudden, violent collision. By 14:30 hours, the patrol made contact. Not a direct assault, but the ominous crack of a single carabiner 9.8K rifle shot. An American point man went down, wounded in the shoulder. The Germans, using the complex terrain with masterful skill, began to maneuver. From the left flank, the distinctive ripping sound of an MP-40 submachine gun stitched through the trees. Chips of wood and leaves rained down on McNiece's position. From the right, the deeper thump of rifle grenades sent geysers of dirt and root into the air. The Americans were taking fire from 3 sides. They were in a killing zone. Sergeant McNiece barked orders, his squad returning disciplined fire. But the German noose was tightening. A German MG-34, its bipod set on a fallen log, began to lay down a lethal grazing fire, pinning the Americans down. The sound was deafening, a cyclic roar that drowned out shouts and the cries of the wounded. Within minutes, 2 more paratroopers were hit. The squad medic scrambled through the dirt, his bandages already soaked. "We're being flanked. Fall back by 2, McNiece yelled. The retreat was a nightmare. Crawling, sprinting, stopping to fire a few desperate rounds. They fell back through the orchard, towards a denser thicket of bramble and ancient oaks. Their hope was to reach a sunken farm track, a natural trench. But the Germans were swift. By 14:45 hours, McNiece found himself separated. The rest of his squad had either made it to the track or were casualties in the green gloom. He was alone, his Thompson down to its last magazine. He could hear German voices now, guttural shouts coordinating the hunt. They were perhaps 50 yards away, moving in. He made for a shell crater, the remnants of an earlier naval bombardment. It offered scant cover. As he slid into the muddy hollow, he chambered his last round. He could hear boots crunching on twigs, getting closer. Then, silence. They had stopped. They knew he was there. A voice called out in heavily accented English, "Americana, you are surrounded. Put down your weapon. Come out with your hands up." McNiece's mind raced. Out of ammo, no grenades. Surrounded by what sounded like at least a full squad. The weight of the situation pressed down on him. Capture, the uncertainty of a POW camp. The failure of the mission. He looked at his Thompson, the trusted trench broom. It was empty. What happened next was not born of a complex plan, but of a visceral, instant calculation. A decision forged in the fire of combat. He made his choice. Slowly, McNiece raised his hands. He stood up from the crater, the damp, cold mud clinging to his uniform. He saw them now, at least 8 German paratroopers. Their camouflaged smocks blending into the foliage, their weapons trained squarely on him. More figures moved in the trees behind them. Their faces were hard, watchful. One, a Feldwebel sergeant, gestured with his MP40. "Throw down your weapon." McNiece let his Thompson fall to the soft earth with a dull thud. "Come forward." Slowly, he climbed out of the crater, hands still high. The Germans closed in cautiously. 2 of them moved to flank him. Another, a young soldier with wide eyes, kept his rifle pointed at McNiece's chest. The Feldwebel approached, his eyes scanning the American for other weapons. He saw the empty magazine pouch, the lack of grenades. He allowed himself a small, tight smile. Another enemy neutralized. It was then that the Feldwebel, perhaps trying to exert control, perhaps out of sheer curiosity, asked a question. "Why do you fight for the bankers and the Jews? Your war is lost. You are alone." McNiece met the German's gaze. He didn't understand the politics, the ideology. He understood his buddies left behind on the field. He understood the invasion. And in that moment, the sheer absurd hopelessness of his situation, captured, interrogated in a muddy hole in France, struck him. It wasn't a laugh of humor. It was a raw, sharp burst of sound born of exhaustion, defiance, and the sheer irony of the question. He laughed. A short, harsh laugh that echoed in the quiet glade. The German soldiers stiffened, confused. The Feldwebel's smile vanished, replaced by a scowl. "What is so funny?" In that split second of confusion, McNiece's eyes darted. Just 3 feet away, on the belt of the nearest German soldier to his right, he saw it. The ribbed, dark green handle of a style hand-grenaded German potato masher stick grenade. The soldier's hand was not on it. His attention was fixed on his sergeant and the puzzling prisoner. Time seemed to distort. The laugh had been the distraction. Now was the moment. With a speed that belied his exhaustion, McNiece dropped his raised hands and lunged, not away, but toward the German soldier. His left hand grabbed the man's tunic, yanking him off balance. His right hand closed around the cold, familiar cylinder of the grenade on the man's belt. He ripped it free in one fluid motion. Shouts erupted in German. A rifle butt swung towards his head, grazing his temple. But McNiece was already in motion, a whirlwind of desperate violence. He pulled the porcelain bead at the end of the grenade's cord, hearing the faint pop of the friction igniter inside. 4.5 seconds, asterisk. He didn't throw it at the soldiers. He shoved it, handle first, back into the ammunition pouch on the stunned German soldier's belt. Asterisk. Then, with all his strength, he hurled the man, now a living, screaming bomb directly into the heart of the clustered German patrol. 9. The scream was lost in the chaos. The Germans scrambled, horrified, trying to push their comrade away. The Feldwebel raised his submachine gun. It was too late, asterisk. The explosion was a deafening crump in the confined space. Shrapnel, the grenades, fragmentation sleeve, and pieces of the soldier's own equipment scythed outwards in a lethal cloud. The concussive blast knocked McNiece to the ground, his ears ringing, his vision blurred by smoke and debris, asterisk. But he was alive. And he was now armed. The blast had killed or mortally wounded at least 5 Germans instantly. The rest were staggered, disoriented, some wounded by the shrapnel. The neat capture operation had dissolved into a scene of carnage and shock. McNiece didn't hesitate. He rolled, his hands searching through the smoke-choked dirt. His fingers found the stock of AMP-40 knocked from a dead man's grip. He seized it, checked the magazine, it was nearly full, and rose to a knee. What followed was not a battle, it was a storm. A one-man tempest of vengeance and survival. The remaining Germans, now perhaps 10 or 12, were trying to regroup, but McNiece was already among them. He fired from the hip, short, controlled bursts of 9mm fire. The MP40 chattered in his hands. A German spun and fell. Another turned to face him, only to be cut down before he could raise his rifle. McNiece moved like a phantom through the smoke, using the trees for cover, firing, moving, firing again. He was no longer a prisoner. He was the hunter. He scooped up a Mauser rifle, using its accuracy to pick off a German trying to set up the MG-34 on a new position. The German machine gunner slumped over his weapon. Panic began to infect the German patrol. They were trained soldiers, but they were not prepared for this for a man who had turned himself into a human booby trap. For the sudden, violent reversal of fortune, their shouts were now tinged with fear. They fired back, but their shots were wild, aimed at shadows. McNiece saw the young soldier who had first pointed his rifle at him. The boy was trying to crawl away, wounded in the leg. McNiece's finger tightened on the trigger, then eased. He turned his fire elsewhere. He fought with a cold, mechanical efficiency. A grenade tossed into a two-man position behind a fallen tree. A burst of fire that silenced a sniper trying to climb to a higher branch. He used their own weapons, their own ammunition, against them. The firefight was a furious close-range melee measured in feet, not yards. And then, as suddenly as it began, it was over. The firing stopped. The only sounds were the crackle of burning underbrush from the grenade blast, the moans of the wounded, and McNiece's own ragged breathing. He stood, chest heaving, smoke curling from the barrel of the MP-40. He scanned the clearing through stinging eyes. No one was standing against him. He looked at his watch. The entire engagement, from the laugh to the final shot, had lasted 45 seconds. In 45 seconds of unimaginable violence, Technical Sergeant Jake McNiece had killed 21 German paratroopers, wounded several others, who would later be captured by the advancing American line. The rest of the patrol had fled, broken by the ferocity of the counterattack from a man they believed was defeated. McNiece, bleeding from his temple and countless small shrapnel cuts, collected his Thompson, gathered ammunition from the field, and eventually worked his way back to the sunken track, rejoining what was left of his squad. His report was initially met with disbelief, but later patrols would confirm the grim scene in the orchard. The impact was immediate. The German mortar position, now devoid of its local security, was overrun by an American platoon later that evening. The immediate threat to that sector of the 101st's advance was eliminated, all because of one man's refusal to surrender. For his actions on June 10, 1944, Technical Sergeant Jake McNiece was recommended for the Medal of Honor. The paperwork, lost in the chaotic push through Normandy and the later battles in Holland and Bastogne, was never finalized. He was instead awarded the Distinguished Service Cross, the nation's second highest award for valor. The citation simply stated he had displayed extraordinary heroism in action against the enemy, turning certain capture into a devastating defensive victory. But the legacy of those 45 seconds is more than a medal. It is a testament to the unquantifiable factor in warfare, the human spirit. It is about the sheer, unbending will to fight on when all rational calculation says the battle is over. McNiece did not have superior numbers, air support, or artillery. He had audacity, lightning-fast reflexes, and the ruthless instinct to seize a single, fleeting opportunity. He survived the war, returning to a quiet life forever marked by the sounds and decisions of that afternoon in Normandy. His story, though legendary within the ranks of the 101st Airborne, remained largely unknown to the public, a single, intensely violent footnote in the vast narrative of World War II, yet it stands as one of the most remarkable episodes of individual combat in the entire conflict, a moment where the balance of a small battle, and perhaps the fate of several American lives, hinged on a laugh, a lunge, and the unbreakable resolve of a screaming eagle. The fight in the orchard near Bopt faded into the larger roar of the Normandy campaign. Carrington would fall. The breakout would come. The war would grind on for nearly another year, but for 21 German soldiers and 1 American paratrooper, the war ended, or was forever defined, in 3/4 of a minute in a French wood. This was just one of countless untold stories from the Second World War, stories of impossible odds, of forgotten heroism, and of the profound moments where history hinged on the actions of a single individual.